This is Madden Chronicles. It's in the game. This is my unfiltered, no nonsense journey through solopreneurship with yours truly, Maya Madden. Get ready for some real talk, a pinch of no holds barred truth, and a whole lot of authenticity. Join me as we master the art of consulting one truth bomb at a time. I'm super excited. This is our first episode. I have Ivana Sinibaldi Ellis, who is my first cousin, the yin to my yang. I am the yang to her yin. And it is her 1 year anniversary at RevUp Mastery, which is absolutely wild. It is my 1.5 year anniversary. And I'm just excited for this episode. Obviously, the first one is the most intimidating. So every single episode of mine is going to be super conversational, raw, real. And I want you guys to just hear my experiences and scaling RevUp Mastery, descaling RevUp Mastery, rescaling RevUp Mastery, in addition to a lot of the war and win stories that we have had, over this last year, especially with me and Ivana. So nepotism runs deep in my family, not due to the fact that we're blood, but due to the fact that we were raised by some pretty incredible and very intimidating entrepreneurs. So, Ivana, tell me a little bit about watching your dad just be the man that he is, and I'll talk about my mom, and it'll just evolve into how their partnership has worked. It's similarly to how ours has. So tell me about him and just like being raised by him in addition to your mom. Let's start there.
First of all, regarding my dad, well, I think that since I was little, I think he has been my role model. Like every time that I think about him, I'm like, I want to be like him. I want to be like the way that he has about thinking. And just right when life hits you, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now what? He has this ideas just flowing in, and he's like, okay, let's build this, let's do this. How are we gonna solve this? Like that entrepreneurial mind, like he's just impressive. I remember when we were little, he never stopped being a dad, even though he was an entrepreneur and a businessman. I remember that around 8 o'clock when he would come back, instead of just being tired and going back to sleep, he would be just like, hey guys, do you want to play a game? We had this little mobile, I think, toys when we were smaller with my siblings, and he would be so excited about playing with that with us in the at night. And we were like, but you worked the whole day. And he was like, yeah, I don't mind, I want to play with you guys.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, I think that that was like amazing because I got to watch him grow as a businessman, but also he never stopped being a dad. So he had like that balance. And then as I started growing and I realized the importance about building a company, building like your future, I was like more appreciative about the things that he did. And just like, well, you know him too, like our
Yeah.
parents, the ability they have about building empires is just crazy. And I think about that of us right now. I'm like, and we always talk about this, like, how do they do this? Like, we would be struggling and stuff.
I know, we'd be running blind. And so obviously our parents own like 20 million businesses, so we don't have to get into like the names of all of them, but maybe talk about like the evolution that you had watching him grow his variety of businesses at a high level. And then I'll do the same with my mom. And then obviously now they've like joined forces over the last like, I don't know how many years. And I know they collaborated before that when they had business questions. But, your dad started humble, but as his daughter, like watching him go through the challenges of like starting with one baby idea to now the multitude of businesses that he owns and operates at an impressive level. What did that look like for you? Because I mean, yes, I know him, but I saw that from my mom's end. And now I see it, since, he's moved to the States and we get to travel a lot together as families, more so than we did when we were younger. And maybe we're just more tuned in now too to like what they're doing. But like you said, you're more appreciative now, and he still made the time to be an awesome dad. But, what were some of the lessons that you took just watching him go from, small business numero uno to now, the king of a multitude of empires with that humble entrepreneurial mindset, like that we have the blessing of seeing? What was that like?
I think that one of the things that I, up until today, think more about is the way that he treated his employees and the way that he was so, like, if they had a problem, it became his problem. If they needed help, they would do whatever in his hands to help them. And he was actually the first, one of the, I'm not sure if the first or one of the first companies in Guatemala that hired employees with Down syndrome. And
Yeah.
yeah, for me that was like wow. And he was fully 100% into onboarding Down syndrome employees and giving them the chance and the opportunity that in Guatemala, that's something that you would never see. Like
And
something.
women, right? Like he was very inclusive from the beginning, which, as we know, the US has evolved and become more inclusive for women in the workforce, but, there's still opportunity there to get better. But Central America, there's more opportunity for it to get a lot better. And, I've noticed that his employees are very diverse from, having, like some sort of setback in your mental state, or like finding what is the secret sauce behind that person, in addition to hiring women in such a male dominated machismo type culture.
Yeah.
He's really broken apart for his companies, which is obviously why he's so successful. But I mean, when you say he was super committed to onboarding, which I know him and my mom now have a lot of initiatives together when it comes to, helping people with disabilities, especially like, someone in a wheelchair is perfect for remote work because they're already sitting down and can work behind a computer. Obviously, people with Down syndrome, there are certain things that they're passionate about. So we have the initiative of like getting some of our pastries from areas and communities that focus on giving someone with Down syndrome an outlet to cook, and we sell those at Santos, in addition to offering women who are mostly homebound in Guate while their husbands are working, because again, there's still a lot of catch up to do there. And he was just never afraid to source talent if they, had a skill set that he could utilize and invest in. And I mean, I guess, do you have like an example or two of like, I don't know, just like a story that comes to mind of a highlight? I mean, obviously at this point, I mean, he's hired over like 15,000 people, so there's a lot to choose from. But I mean, yeah, like what kind of comes to mind as far as maybe some highlights on that front?
I remember, and this story is super like sweet. We had this guy at the coffee farm. His name was I forgot his name. I think it's Otto, and he had Down syndrome. And I remember that every time he would see my dad, he would just run and be like "Jefe," and just hug him and grab him. And once it was Christmas, and they had like this turkeys. And I remember that he walked like 40 minutes up to the house and just had his chicken. It was dead. He was like, "This
Oh,
is for your Christmas dinner." And he gave
oh,
us this big chicken, and we were like we all started crying. It was just like those little things that you know that you're doing something right. And probably in his head, he was like, "I need to give them something. What should I give them?" And he just brought one of his chickens, which for him it was like from his farm. I don't know, it was like super special. And I think that that's one of my favorite stories for sure.
that's a great story. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it's important for everyone to know our background. So, Yvonne and I are the sixth generation of coffee farmers for, what we now call Santos, which are our 7 brick and mortar stores here in Alabama. We started as the Crimson Cafe with just one coffee shop. And then, my mom and my dad launched that with the help of, my aunt and my uncle, which are Yvonne's parents. And we realized very quickly, wow, we are the source. So we don't have to have a middleman. So all import, export, is family controlled. And Ivana and I are starting to take the reins on some of the wholesale operational side of things. But our experiences, like growing up, like as both city girls and farm girls, is pretty rare, because we're like super city girl, but then like also super farm girls, because Yvonne and I learned early on, okay, the equestrian side wasn't really for us. We had a general manager once put us on like a loco horse and we got bucked off really bad. So we were a bit traumatized by that. But like our cousins, Luciano and Kate, like they're blue ribbon riders and like, just incredible at it. And then Max is like definitely the tech guy. So of course, him along with some of our younger cousins forced us to get internet at the farms, and I cried that day because it was like the one place I could unplug. That being said, thankfully it doesn't reach certain areas and I can still like be out in the wilderness and essentially nurture that love of nature. And so there's so many stories that you'll hear from me and Ivana over the course of these podcast episodes that we have, and I'm sure we will evolve in figuring out how to edit these better and have a flow. But the goal is for really y'all to know us to know y'all. And if you find comfort in, hearing from a couple chicas or mamacitas or, badass business women who are young and learning and have had the blessing of being mentored, not only by our incredibly successful parents, but our, mentors throughout our, professional careers as well. This is definitely the podcast for you. If you're a woman who, is ready to take the plunge and do something on your own, you'll find a ton of value here. Or an operator within a company, that's super male dominated. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm very much like share minded. Her mom was like, well, you need to find like a rich man. And she goes like, yes, mom, like I am a rich man. And that being said, she always talks about how much she still loves men. And that's the truth. Like we love them, like we absolutely need them in our life, but we're in a very pivotal dynamic right now where it's like, being a businesswoman, having the babies, raising the babies, still being a businesswoman, and balancing all of that, when the truth is there isn't balance. And I mean, I've definitely come to terms with the fact that I needed an outlet like this where I could be very authentic and, vulnerable, but also the aggressive side of me has a safe space to come out, because, it's not that we don't have the feminine side in us, but it requires a protective alpha male personality for us to feel safe in that, because I love the softer side of Maya. Mom talks about it all the time about like the softer side of Wendy, because her being like the global legal queen. And I mean, I always am so shocked. Like, I know she's my hero every second, but then it's like, I had no idea she had this up her sleeve too. It's like every 5 minutes. So watching her and dad alongside, my aunt and uncle, your parents, scale the coffee shop and it be so successful. And then her put herself through law school, become like, the first Hispanic female partner in law firms here in Alabama, which is super deep South, and then working for Elon Musk as the global head of employment. And like now her clients on a retainer are just like, wow. But in addition to that, like the humbleness that she has of testing a or not testing a podcast. Well, I guess that's what we're doing, but like testing a concept. And if it doesn't work, cool. Like we'll try another one. But I just find that, for us, you're celebrating your 1 year. I'm celebrating like my 1 year and change. And since you've come on board, like I've truly felt like I had that other mentality of just that fearless entrepreneurial mindset. And it comes from being, cut from a sharp cloth of watching our parents go through these, like you said, crazy, wild experiences that just require a level of grit and like perseverance that is rare. And so I know we're incredibly blessed, but I also think that, I mean, I don't care about being like on Forbes or like having any sort of like accolade. I saw this video the other day that talked about how, typically after, someone receives an Oscar or an Emmy award, they go home and they cry because they realize like this is just like, I mean, it's just a statue. Like it doesn't mean anything. What meant something was me being able, to film or record, this incredible movie or song. And then like, I made a family with those people. And it's wild to me when I think about like our long-term goals. Obviously, like we're very like bread minded, like we want to secure the bag, and our core value is help people and make a lot of money. One of our core values, we have many. But that being said, really helping people is what allows you to continuously receive providence, which is just consistent prosperity. And watching our parents care about people who, are kind of pushed to the wayside, it's a huge blessing for us. And, while we continue to embark on this journey, we want to honor our parents. I'm very faith-based. I believe that I report to God, my mom, my clients, and then sometimes Ivana. And so just kidding, Marianne as well. She is employee number one. And as we grow and scale our team and find more A players, or the A players that we have sourced that we're so thankful for, I just want to ensure that like we take these moments that we're at now, and because we're going to look back and like listen to this episode and just like bust out laughing, or we're going to be like, wow, like, okay, that basic concept, like we've overcomplicated it. We need to get back to that, simple can be better at times way of thinking. And so, let's just talk a little bit about some of our highlights as far as scaling our business. So I'll start. When I started RevUp Mastery, I definitely had this desire to prove myself to my family because, me and Ivana, along with our cousins, are next in line to take over this like huge operation, in addition to like all of our other families, like, or our other parents, like companies. And, our goal was to prove to ourselves that we could do it and then inherit an incredible legacy. But we were really blessed that although we did have somewhat of a silver spoon upbringing, like we had to earn it. Like mom was like, yeah, I'll absolutely blow a bag on like your outfits for this upcoming year, but you better bring me home good grades, and you better like find a creative way to make some side money. And so, I mean, I was like babysitting and everything from when I was like, little, and she was teaching me about how to save and how to think long term, in addition to being very humble with the blessings that I had. And I know that your parents are very similar in that mindset as well. But like starting RevUp Mastery with this deep desire to prove myself, looking back, I do believe that it was a bit of a handicap because I was so hard on myself all of the time when I wasn't perfect. And like perfection is the enemy. Like that's just not possible for any entrepreneur. Like the fundamentals are like, don't fall in love with your way of doing things. Don't fall in love with your product, because you're going to test it. It may work. It may not work. You may have to completely change the outcome of your business, or the way that you go about like offering an outcome, and consistently evolve. Thankfully, we've been blessed with a retention rate of 97.327%. Yes, I'm in the thousands. I could go deeper if you wanted. I'm like the square root of pi when it comes to retention. But those like few fires that we had were really hard, because firing like clients, it was almost harder than firing internal employees, which, we did scale this massive team. And then like Ivana and I have always run payroll together and like kept track of our software stacks and figured out hacks and ways to save money, in addition to making sure that like we have the latest and greatest tech, but we're alpha testing it before we do it, which we learned very quickly. We're kind of like like shoot, stance, aim, like versus stance, aim, shoot. And so we've changed that up a good bit. But ultimately, when we realized that we needed to take a step back and source the ideal clients for us, which is something that I've always talked about, but I've also always worked in volume sales. So scaling to like 240 markets was just like 200 was like the baseline goal for me. Like I wanted like 400, and we would have needed like double the workforce. And then when we got to like 241, like Maya was like, or not Maya, Ivana was like, Maya, are you happy? And I was like, no. And she was like, why? And I was like, well, I'm not worried about the fact that like our payroll and our software stack is like incredibly high. It's just like, okay, is everyone on this team not necessarily deserving, but like, are we seeing the return on our investment, especially considering like we were basing some of our comp on the cost of living, and that is not a great way to scale a business at all. We are very inclusive when it comes to international talent. And if I can find someone who's incredibly talented in another country who's going to outperform someone US based, like, yes, I will save money, but that's not the point. The point is like, we will literally be offering an opportunity for somebody who can execute, who is willing to pivot and adapt without stressing us out more than we already are, just being entrepreneurs ourselves. But I feel like Ivana and I have learned a lot of lessons, and that's really what this podcast is about, is yes, just telling our story and being super real. We'll have a multitude of guests on here, and I'm sure these conversations will evolve and maybe become a little more structured, but I'm more of a tangent type of woman. That being said, I do close the loop as long as I'm not interrupted and then my thought like gets out of my head, or I interrupt myself with another thought, which rarely happens, but at times it does. So, entrepreneurship, it is a wild ride. And the biggest takeaway here is like, regardless of whether or not you come from a background like me and Ivana, like if you have a passion and you want to test it out, like you really have to be willing to make a leap and fully commit, and also be incredibly respectful of how you might have to pivot and change, whether that is client acquisition strategy, whether that is recruiting strategy internally or for clients, whether that is, how to be graceful with yourself when it's not always as seamless as we want it to be, or how to be proud of yourself. I think that's like the hardest part. Like we will see incredible success for clients or ourselves internally, and then me and Ivana are so gung-ho. Okay, like, okay, now the next method, like now the next goal. And it's like we really need to take a step back and like, number one, congratulate ourselves for like getting past year 1.5, which statistically is low for, an entrepreneur or any sort of startup organization. And especially at our age, like I'm 27, you are, what did you just turn 26?
No, 25.
25. Yeah. And so, oh yeah, Max turns 26 like a month before you, right? Or
Yeah.
older than him.
No, he is 1 month older than
He's
me.
one, yeah, okay, yeah. Max, my brother, also a very brilliant guy. He like, I don't know, can take a computer or car apart and like put it back together in 2 seconds. And then Luciano is like our brilliant operator. I think he embodies a lot of the skill sets your dad has when it comes to team building. Like anytime he's on break, like he runs ops for Santos, and like all the employees are happy. I see him just like collaborating with them. And then Kate, like, she's studying human resources at Penn and doing awesome. I'm hoping she goes back to the equestrian side of things, because, there's a bag gonna have to be made in the breeding of all of our incredible, like, Stangs and Spanish horses. And she's like Snow White, like the animal whisperer. It could be like a rabid raccoon, and she'd make best friends with it and like take it to the vet, get it healed. But I find that so impressive. And so, as far as you go, Ivana, like, I can't tell you thank you enough for like riding this wave with me. That is like this roller coaster, and the highs are so high, like when we had like our first few like crazy double six-figure months, and we were like, oh my gosh, we hit the jackpot. And then the onboarding of like so many employees in order to deliver. And then realizing like, okay, well, we deserve to raise our rates and really ensure we have an A team who can deliver and be okay in that. And also learn from our clients who are owner operators too, which our ideal clients do teach us a lot. Like
Mhm.
we learn from them and they learn from us, but they respect like, hey, you paid us to consult you on our secret sauce. Let's run with that. You have other sauce you want to teach us, like not relative to this, to give us enough run room to ensure you see return on your investment. We would love to learn about it, like in the interim as we're tracking and measuring. And then, once we have a significant amount of run room to look back and see, what parts of the initiative could be optimized, and you come in and give us your feedback or your experiences, like let's collaborate together and make this thing 10 times better. So, to wrap up our first episode, our consulting firm is called RevUp Mastery. We started exclusively in the property management industry, scaling, sales departments. Then we moved into ensuring we would retain those clients we brought on by launching Rev Operations. And then we're big believers in all like departments respecting each other. And I know that sales and marketing are always like, against each other to a certain point. We're not like that at all. So we brought Rev Branding on board as well, and proved all those concepts in stealth mode with some incredible property managers that would blow you away, from private to commercial to 0 to 300, 0 to 500, or 500 to like thousands, or they were already at thousands, and we helped them raise retention, occupancy, like so many different initiatives. And now we've gotten into the construction and insurance verticals, which were natural evolution, because I don't know how many property managers haven't done like, a homeowner's insurance policy swap to a landlord insurance policy swap. And then obviously construction goes hand in hand with property management on the maintenance side. And so our goal is to, connect with owner operators who truly want a helping hand, because we do join your team and we're just trying to make it better and essentially diagnose, where we can assist you. And then in insurance companies, obviously, we're learning a lot, like when it comes to, health and medical. And it's been super amazing to have patrons who like have property management companies that also have insurance companies that also have construction companies, and like learn from them and replicate a concept that's been proven. And we're just told on a consistent basis, like y'all have, the recruiting practices down, you have the bones, and it's transferable in any industry. It's just a little tweak to the recipe, right? Any closing thoughts on your end, Ivana, as far as, our first episode, which is super raw and super real and a
No,
wild ride?
thinking about how many things we don't have much time, but all of the things that happened this last year, like I think wow, it's just been a crazy year, and I think that that's just part of life. And we are doing so good right now that I'm just so thankful that we are where we are, and that we have the mentors that we have, and that we're together in this journey. And it's just like it's like having someone that is there with you, struggling the same as you, and we're just suffering together, but we're getting through this. So I think that it's just being
And winning together as well, which we need to be better about focusing on, because obviously, like, rev gen and retention isn't our problem. Our problem is like telling ourselves to stop working, and me maybe getting off of this like wartime 4-hour sleep cycle twice a day. But I'm trying to tackle like the early morning riser and the night owl, in addition to like running my daily meetings, so that like I have my time to bust out work without like the constant barrage of chats and emails and calls and questions. And but I mean, that's really just part of entrepreneurship. Like, do you have the ability to say, I'm gonna, sacrifice for a few years or maybe longer, and then ensure something is left behind as a legacy? And for us, it was really proving to our parents that we appreciate the blessing that's coming our way, but we want to earn it. Like we wanted to deserve it. And so we will definitely do that. And I'm excited for everything to come. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Madden Chronicles, it's in the game. And so we'll talk more about what that game looks like in depth with a variety of different players. But thank you for joining us on our first episode. And we look forward to having you listen to more of them as they evolve.